Hey YouTube, this is the 2014 Yamaha FZ-09. Sorry for the clutter in the driveway, but here it is. This is the liquid graphite model. Just got this a couple days ago, and I'm really excited to show you around. So just doing a quick walk around before we do the ride along and the full review. So obviously this is a highly anticipated bike, a lot of people talking about it, a lot of magazine reviewers have released some reviews on it, and some of them I think after this review may differ quite a bit from those. But anyways, here it is. So a lot of you guys are probably going to look at this bike, and the first thing you're like, well, how is this going to compare to a street triple? And don't worry, we'll hit all those facts and get into that throughout this video. But again, to start off, this is the liquid graphite model, so essentially you've got the gray tank, hopefully that shows up nicely in the video, and you've got these really gorgeous blue wheels. I love what they did with them. Instead of doing what BMW did with the HP4, they went with a powder coated, more of a rough finish on them, and it's really durable. I just cleaned them actually, and I was really impressed how they clean up. The brake dust and dirt and grime from the road just comes right off really easily. Really solid finish, so you don't have to worry about swirl marking and scratching and that type of stuff. Anyways, on this bike, the first thing when you sit on it that you'll notice is, wow, it's so light. It feels so light, at least. But you know, this bike comes in at 414 pounds wet. That's what the specs say, and I would say that it feels at most that. The bike has a seat height of about 32.1 inches on the standard preload. If you turn it up a bit like I did to stiffen it up and set the sag correctly for me, it might increase it a bit. The bike comes standard, at least mine did, with some Dunlop Sport Max tires. The rear is a 180 and the front is a 120, and so I guess to be specific, their back's a 180/55 ZR17, front is a 120/70 ZR17. This bike uses Kayaba forks, if you didn't know that. The Kayaba forks on this bike are going to give you preload and rebound adjustments. So you'll see on this side is going to be your preload, and on this side you'll see a little spot for your adjustments. That there is going to adjust your rebound. Surprisingly, the compression that Yamaha set on the suspension is really good. You know, I was concerned with when there wasn't a compression adjustment for this bike, but wow, I was really impressed when I set up my suspension. And if you watch any of my videos, you know I'm really big on that. So first thing we did here was set up the suspension, and my God, I don't know how you guys are going to ride this bike. This is probably the bike that comes off the showroom floor the worst when it comes to suspension. But I'll stick to the rest of that stuff once I'm on the bike and talking about it, so I can demonstrate a few more things. But I just want to go over the bike real quick with you and show you some of the switch gear. Some of the stuff's really impressive. So everything is really high quality, feels really solid. I love their tack and their gauge, what they did here. I mean, it's not it's not a TFT display or the most incredible screen out there, but it's really well laid out. Where they put the ignition, the key's great. I just love everything they did, really. I mean, everything feels really good. When you touch it and you feel it, it doesn't feel like it's going to break. Everything clicks and you can feel it through a glove, really solid, and everything works flawlessly. The other thing is this headlight. Personally, I'm a big fan of it. Looks very Street Fighter-ish. Also puts out a lot of light. Really surprised when I rode it last night how far it throws. I'm used to my Ducati now that has spoiled with the xenons, or the LEDs actually, that they have on it, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be satisfied with these, but these are great. On this side, you'll see, you know, all the basic stuff. You know, Yamaha's got actually a really nice set of stock rear sets. They've got great bite if you wear a boot when you ride like I do. They're great. These feelers, I'm just going to probably unscrew them, even though I know the reason for them, but I don't know. To me, that they're just unnecessary. Everything's solid. I don't know if you can hear the clicking. Everything is just great. No question about it there. You'll see there's a little notch here, as well as on this side of the bike. There's a little notch on this rear set. The idea here is for luggage, so you can actually tie down, say you have a rear bag or something that's going to go up on the seat, and that's what this is for. Really interesting thoughts, you know, for guys who are going to, you know, maybe tour on it or commute on it. That's going to be a really cool feature. The other thing is, here's the rear shock. You can see the setup hopefully on it. The adjustment is going to be on the other side of the bike through here. That's where you're going to adjust your settings for the rear shock. Other than that, this is basically just a simple walk around just so you can see the outside of the bike. I think it looks beautiful, of course subjective. The fender eliminator is pretty horrid, but as is most, they took the biggest signals they could find and they put them there. Luckily that you can see them, but yeah, that's going to go as soon as there's a good option available. I love the tail light. Basically, when you got the tail light running, you've got these two areas are your areas that would stay on all the time. Then when you brake, your center light, so it's very distinct what's the difference between braking and your running light. I like that a lot. Surprisingly, the rear tires feel good. Again, we'll touch base on that and get into the specifics in the ride-along review, which is, you know, going to come right after this. And again, give you that. One thing I do want to show you guys that I really like is to remove the seat. Generally, you've got a little open key pocket somewhere under here. If hopefully you can see this, Yamaha's introduced a little flap here. You open that, and inside there is your key. I think that is just so smart. It keeps it clean, keeps the grime, you know, from not getting into the key outlet. Never have to worry about that. And it's kind of a spot that if you don't really know about it, I mean, you know, you may just overlook it. So it's great. The seat is super comfortable. Some guys, funny enough, are complaining that the seat is too aggressive. Now, I'm not sure what those guys are smoking, but this seat is far from aggressive. It's comfortable. It gives you two good positions to sit on. And again, I'll touch base on the rest of the specifics in the main video. But I love this bike so far. And stay tuned. We're going to transfer into the video. Hey guys. Alright, so now we're on the bike. And let's get her started up. Turn the key, see the ignition go. So you got a two-stage starter switch. Basically, you've got your bottom, which is off. First starts your priming of the fuel pump, if the fuel pump's not already primed. And then second one, obviously make sure you're neutral and kickstand up or hold the clutch. In this case, we're in neutral, indicated by the neutral sign there. So let's start it up. Starts right up, of course. Now, the really nice thing about this bike is the confidence that you'll have in Yamaha, at least for me. The way the bike, just everything runs, its smoothness, also makes it not only confidence inspiring, but you get a really good feel with the engine. You can tell if the bike is, I would say, if I could easily tell if there was something running off on the bike, you know, if it was running more rough and stuff, just because the engine smoothness is so distinct right now. The way that it's just so, you know, just so crisp. Now, we went over the overview in this video, and I kind of walked around it and stuff, and I'm going to retouch on a lot of things, so if I'm repetitive on some issues, I apologize in advance, but there's a lot that I want to hit on this bike. Some things I'll hit on a couple times just so you know in advance. But anyways, generally on my bikes, I'll wait till the bike gets to about 100 degrees, 110 degrees or so. Then I'll start going slow and let it build up temperature while I'm moving. It's you know, for me, I believe there's two stages of warm-up. So I let it warm up just briefly on an idle. I don't like idling. Just let it get a little bit of temp in it, and then I warm it up slowly while I'm moving. Getting to the bike, again, I hit on all the switch gear. In my gloves, I can flip all these switches and very clearly see and feel what I'm doing. And the indications on here are just unbelievable. Everything is just simple, easy, and you know, very clear. There's no difficulty seeing it in direct sunlight, in you know, obviously not in dark. That would be the easiest time to see it. But anyways, so
the first thing that I want to talk about is I think the guys who are going to be buying this bike were maybe considering it for commuting, maybe considering it as their main bike. You know, maybe they want to do some canyon carving, or maybe a little bit of everything, or this may just be somebody's secondary bike. Maybe they have a sports bike that they use for the canyons and everything, and they want to get a bike like this to do everything else on. Well, here's the deal. You can do everything I mentioned on this bike, but it depends to an extent on certain ones. When it comes to commuting, unbelievable bike for that. Your seating position on this bike, I would say, is very much like a supermoto. You're straight up and down. You have excellent visibility of the road around you. Easy to see. You know, traffic overhead. I can see, you know, right with the SUVs, no problem. So the seating position's great. The seat is phenomenal. I love the seating position because the seat's not like a supermoto. The seat, it does give you support. It pushes you on the tank, does what you would want from a bike that can be aggressive, which this bike most definitely can. Now, of course, this bike in the reviews a lot is compared to a Street Triple R for good reason, and a Street Triple, and actually it's compared to a Street Triple, where I believe it should be only compared to the Street Triple R. But here's the scenario. I'm gonna touch base on this comparison a lot because it's a comparison that's made a lot by the critics and by guys who are considering the bike, and guys really want to know. Now, I've ridden both bikes extensively. In the Street Triple R, I really don't waste time on the regular Street Triple because it's not something I'd consider. The Street Triple R, however, I will touch base on the direct comparison. So let's just get right to it. So on this bike, obviously you've got a large displacement motor. This motor is 849 cc's, puts out about 115 horsepower and about 65 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that's right there, the torque is what's the biggest jump on the Triumph. You've got, I believe, about 15 foot-pounds of torque, which is a lot, you know. I mean, that's a good number, and a bike that only weighs 11 pounds more than the Triumph. So, you know, that's definitely something that, you know, is to be said. The engine, smoother, doesn't feel like you've got to rev it. The Triumph has a very dead mid-range on it, in my opinion. Feels like it's got a little bit of area where it's revving, but you're really not going anywhere. This bike blew me away when I got on it. I was really nervous when I got it because of the reviews I read from guys like Ride Apart. I really like Wes's reviews most of the time, and I was nervous because a lot of those guys and himself were saying, you know, the suspension's really bad, the bike has really bad fueling. And I'm still today trying to figure out what the hell they're talking about. Because when I got the bike and I had all these expectations that, that the bike was going to be, really rough and have fueling problems, it made me really nervous. I was really questioning, the purchase, and they were implanting this idea that the bike really wasn't that great. And Yamaha had kind of dropped the ball. But I took a risk on it, and I decided I wanted to do it. You know, I've been on the Street Triple Rs, I've got the experience there, and I love the way this bike looks. I thought Yamaha just killed it. And so I got on it, and immediately, first 5 miles of riding, I had a huge grin on my face. I just couldn't believe how far off the reviews were. I mean, the fueling on this bike is by no means bad. What it is, and I'll explain this here, is if you can see the screen, there you'll see here, it says mode, and right now I'm in standard mode. There's 3 modes on this bike. There's A mode, standard, which is what we're in currently, which is the default, and B mode, which is going to be your very relaxed, your fueling, which is going to be more apt for city riding, stop and go type riding, not your performance riding. Well, if you're one of the guys that has to ride everything in A mode, even though there's no real rhyme or reason for it, you don't have reduced power, you just have a different throttle response, yeah, you're going to have what you feel is really cutty fueling. And other than that, riding in A mode, standard mode, I find it to be just awesome. The throttle response is great. Could it be improved? Yes. Is it perfect? No. I will agree with that. There's no question that there's room for improvement when it comes to the fueling. But I think these days, with the EPA regulations, with the noise regulations, with all the basis that these bike manufacturers have to meet to have these bikes, especially in California, I think that you're going to find that this is not unusual, and this is common on pretty much most bikes, and if it's not, it's going to become that way, unfortunately. The good news is that this is if it was an issue that was bothering you, it's a very simple fix with one of many numerous ways. One could be a custom tune, but one way you could flash your ECU, piggyback, maybe some guys run power commanders. It's all personal preference. There's a lot of options out there, but for me, the bike is just perfect the way it is. I have no interest in touching it at this time. I think if I was to consider maybe an exhaust, go with the Akrapovic or Akrapovic, however you want to pronounce it, then yeah, for sure, I could, you pair it with a tune. I think you'd have a whole different animal and a lot more power too. The thing I like about this engine is, unlike the Triumph, you don't have to rev it to get the power. This bike makes the power, more power than the Triumph at 3,000, 2,000 RPMs less. So when you run it around, you just can be at 2,000 to 3,000 RPM everywhere. You don't have to have this screeching bike everywhere, revving it out to get places. The torque on the bike is unbelievable. The engine is that good. And keep in mind, I'm coming off a 2014 Panigale R, a bike that's got questionably some of the best suspension components out there. It's got one of the most powerful engines out there. And this bike is just a absolute blast to ride. Everything about it is great. It's got a great engine, it's got great brakes, it's got a great seat, it's comfortable, everything about it is just fun, and I like it, and Yamaha did so well. And the thing about it is, keep in mind that for this bike, you're paying $7,999, I believe, or $7,990 is the MSRP. But on most bikes, what guys are overlooking, and this is the case with Triumph, is Triumph's MSRP, yes, is $9,999 for the Street Triple R. However, that isn't really the true MSRP, because there is an extra freight charge which they add onto it, which is on all bikes. That's why when you go to the dealer, they have freight, which they of course add to, and then of course they put the prep, which is all just bullshit, all for profit. And there's no real prep. I mean, these things take 10 minutes to prep. The thing I like about this, and listen, this isn't because I have this bike, this isn't, oh, the Triumph is bad. The Street Triple R is incredible, and I'm going to touch base on this, get into the specifics of that comparison real quick, but I just want to go over this bike on its own right now and then make the comparisons. The first thing I said in the overview, I mentioned on the suspension. The bike suspension was also a key that reviewers were saying was really bad. They wish they had put better suspension on the bike. They wish that they had, maybe put a little bit more adjustment in this and that. Well, I'm not going to argue. The more adjustment on the suspension, the better. This suspension, however, unlike the FZ-08, has preload and rebound dampening. The good news is the compression, at least for myself, was perfectly set from Yamaha, the way it is, and that was the most surprising part of this whole ordeal. I just could not believe that wow, this bike is so flickable. I just couldn't believe that the compression was actually perfect. I mean, if I was to have set it up differently for myself, I really wouldn't do much different on the settings. So the good news is the suspension's not bad. So let's scratch the two things which these reviewers just, my opinion is, I think one reviewer rides the bike and then the rest of the guys hear him talk and write everything he says down, because honestly the reviews on these days with bikes are so far off. And and the reason I'm reiterating this is because they almost turned me off this bike. It's sad to say, I almost got turned off this bike because of the reviews I read on it were so negative. And negative in the sense of suspension and components, and it turned me away because suspension is one of my biggest things on a bike. I think it should be, since we rely on it so much. But I'll tell you what, I set up this suspension, and well, I didn't. I had, again, the guy I always recommend in my videos, John at Sport Bike Suspension Tuning in San Diego. He set the bike up, and we got the sag correct, we got the dampening correct, we got everything perfect for me. Now, when I rode it beforehand, and I put a couple hundred miles on the bike prior to the suspension adjustment to see how it comes off the floor and how it was, I mean, wow. The suspension is pretty bad from Yamaha as far as the settings. I mean, you sit on the bike and it basically bottoms out just with a guy sitting on it, and then you hit a bump and you're, you know, feel like you're on a trampoline, and it's, oh my god, it could be borderline scary if you're just not comfortable on a bike. So yeah, unfortunately Yamaha did drop the ball on not even setting it up even a bit stiff. It's so soft, it's unbelievable. But again, that's why it's adjustable, so that you can set it up for yourself. So in my eyes, no big deal. The other thing about this bike is the fact that on a naked bike, you predict you're going to be, you know, you want fairings because of the wind and stuff. And look, I'm an advocate for fairings. All my bikes for the last few years have been faired. But then again, I ride, you know, track and on the street, I do a lot of the canyon stuff. For me, the faired bike is the preferred choice. However, these days, I'm actually transferring into the naked bike. And after owning this bike, which is basically a hooligan bike, I mean, wow, it is so much fun, and it's so flickable. But the other thing about this bike is the power. Oh my, 50% throttle at most right there. And the bike is a monster. I mean, just a freaking monster. Now, every time I come down this hill, I rev match, and the one thing I want to hit on is the transmission on this bike. Wow, Yamaha couldn't have done a better job. The suspension, close ratios, but so crisp. Finding neutral is a breeze. You feel a distinct neutral click. You never hit neutral in between shifts. Never have an issue there. I really, really love the transmission, and it works so damn well. The other thing is, I'm gonna pop my visor open a little bit, so if the sound changes, that's why. The other thing is how initially I'm big on having an actual tachometer. I like to have a needle for my RPMs. For me, I know where I know where it is, and it kind of can glance at it just for a brief second, and I know exactly where my RPMs are at. So I was a little concerned with this, because even the Triumph has that, which was my preference. But to my surprise, not only is this gauge very accurate and has what seems to be absolutely no delay, but it is super easy to read. I mean, whether you're on the highway, whether you're carving on the bike, kind of whatever you're doing, it's super easy to look down and see where you're at. The other thing is, close my visor real quick. The other thing is the amount of data that Yamaha has added to the screen. You know, on the FZ-08 there was no gear position indicator. There was not a very easy reading for the for the bike's temperature, but this bike has a lot of other features. It gives you miles per gallon average consumption. It gives you your time, your trip meter. The only thing that it doesn't have, which the Triumph has, is a gear shift indicator, or when you the gear lights, or the shift point changes, which kind of wish it did. I don't know why I'm losing my terminology on what that's actually called, but anyways, I'm sure you know what I mean. The shift lights basically does not have that. Triumph does. But here's the thing. You're talking right off the bat an easy $2,000 savings from the Triumph Street Triple R. And for me, my reason for going with this is because I'm not entirely big on the 675 motor from the Street Triple R as an overall motor. It's a great engine, has great character, but for me, the extra oomph that this motor has, that is, for me, I don't know, it's exactly what it should be. It's not just the extra cc's, but that extra torque and that extra mid-range that this motor gives you provides the level of comfort to make it more all-round capability. So you don't have to ride and ring it out to get the power, which, even though on that triple you do, I mean, and of course the sound that triple makes you want to rev the thing out every chance you get. But the thing about this bike is you can really run it and give, 2,000. I mean, I think maybe I'm at 2% on the throttle right now. I mean, and the bike just it just goes. I mean, that's the thing about it. It's just so freaking amazing, the engine. I mean, honestly, I wish I could give a better example other than my words of how good. I mean, the response, and I'm just in standard mode. Wait till we get into a little bit of a more aggressive mode here, which I will demonstrate in a minute. But the other thing is easy, neutral, no problem. So we've touched base on that. Guys are complaining, well, you know, the Triumph has a larger fuel tank. Okay, this bike has 3.7, the Triumph has 4.2. This bike is supposed to average about 44 miles a gallon. I'm averaging currently, and I've been doing the braking process, about 34 to 38 miles a gallon for the most part, which for my break-in riding I think is pretty darn good. 40, 44 is no question attainable, in my opinion. As I get further in my long-term review on this bike, when I get a few thousand miles on it, I will touch base up again with you guys on that in the comments section, let you know how that's gone. But the bike, you know, I have no complaints when it comes to that. I think the fuel consumption is very standard, no different from the Triumph. If anything, it's better just because you don't have to rev the crap out of it if you don't want to. The other thing is, guys are concerned with the bike's lack of having electronic assist such as ABS, and that's totally understandable. I think nowadays ABS technology has become so inexpensive for manufacturers that there really isn't a rhyme or reason why this bike doesn't have it. You know, I don't think that this bike needs it. I think that if you live in a very wet climate or something, I don't see why it isn't an option, because it's always a good, you know, safety factor to have on your bike. So I really don't have an explanation for why Yamaha hasn't done that. You know, they have it in Europe, they have it on the FZ-08 in Europe too. They just never brought it out here, and you know, I don't really know why. So if that you know is a big problem for you, well, then the Street Triple R is your answer. But if it's not, then trust me when I say this, if you're a beginner and you feel, oh, I gotta get ABS, you know, I think that there's a lot of things you could learn from this bike, because in a lot of ways it is forgiving, in the sense that the ABS, and like any of these electronics, you know, it takes away from your control and your braking control, your rear brake control. I mean, the biggest issue I see with no ABS is guys locking up the rear brake, not so much the front brake. Actually, I think if you're going to brake in a corner, whether you have ABS or not, you're doing something wrong. You know, I don't know. To me, I don't think ABS is going to protect you from stupidity. But the other thing I'll say about this bike is, obviously, both the Triumph and this bike use 41 millimeter forks in the front. Both Kayaba, but the Kayaba forks on the Triumph are a better series and have compression adjustment on the Street Triple R. But then again, you know, you do pay the difference. What I think I see in this bike is the second Öhlins, which I believe will be making suspension for this bike, comes out with it. Even though for 90% of the riders out there, and maybe higher, this suspension is more than adequate, I think that this bike could be just an absolute unbeatable machine with the full Öhlins system that you could get for it. I think that would just be insane. I'm barely touching the throttle right now, and we're just accelerating. Unbelievable. Fourth gear. Wow. By the way, the other thing that this bike offers, which the Triumph lacks on, is engine braking. This bike has an incredible amount of compression and decel, so I very seldomly have to use much brake to get the bike to slow down. It drops speed just incredibly quick. I'm barely touching the throttle, by the way. Just flying everywhere. I mean, it's unbelievable. Really, it is unbelievable. So I'll get into some of the specifics. So yeah, what has Yamaha added to this bike? Well, again, they've added 3 modes. So let's talk about those 3 riding modes. So on my right hand here, you'll see, hopefully in the video, there's a small button that says mode. Next to it is a push-in button. That button will adjust between what I mentioned earlier, A, standard, and B modes. A being your most aggressive standard, your default, B being your most relaxed mode. So let's change, go to A mode. So get into A mode, notice the bike didn't lunge or do anything that these reviewers talk about. And when you hit the gas, it's instant. It just, but you know, your response time is so fast. Yes, the bike wheelies and pretty much everything up till about, you know, it easily wheelies in third, let's put it that way. You can get it up in fourth if you know, if you know what you're doing on the wheelies, no problem. The way that this bike just accelerates in A mode is where you're just like, how much horsepower does this thing have again? Because it doesn't make sense. The way it accelerates, to me this is faster, or at least feels like it accelerates faster than I guess any real 600cc super bike, which should be putting down more power. Questionably is a Gixxer 750. I mean, this thing is just incredible. Oh my god. Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. Notice how it drops speed. I mean, 40, like nothing. I mean, we're not even going that fast or that high on the RPMs. But the thing just slows down. I mean, look, I'm not touching the brakes. That's serious decel. I mean, that's really good. Oh yeah. And that's just unbelievable. Oh my gosh. What a fun bike. I just love this thing. So that's A mode, just to give you an idea of what you're going to expect from A mode. So let's go back and do, what should we do, B mode? Yeah, B mode. Okay, so here's B mode. So B mode, real progressive, great for the city. Still unbelievably quick. I mean, you're not losing your power. The bike just goes into a corner. Oh yeah. Wow. This kind of fun should be illegal. It really should be. And I'm not really doing anything. I mean, I'm just riding around the city here. I mean, wait till you get into some canyons where you can actually do something with the bike. So I'm going to keep it in B mode real quick, since we're going to be in some inside city traffic real quick. So first gear, steady throttle. Notice the bike's not jumping RPMs. It's not lunging. It's not, you know, doing this crap. It's just staying real steady. Going to slow down here. Still in first gear. Yes, it's a green light. 10 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour, not touching the clutch. No problems. Smooth as can be. Shift to second. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Very smooth. The shifts, again, I'll repeat, the transmission is way better than Triumph's. Way crisper shifts. Everything about it's better. With the suspension setup, it's a tough call, honestly. So I mentioned we talked about the fact that the light on the bike is good. The tail lights and the signals are very good, really visible, really easy to see. The gauge cluster is very, very well sorted out. You know, it's a bit of a budget piece. I mean, they could have gone with something that wasn't color display or something, but we can always say they could have. I think for $8 grand, you got a lot of bike in here, no question about it. And I think that the capability of this bike and this engine and the entire package as a whole is not to be overlooked. So now I'm going to get into more of the specifics between the Street Triple R and this bike, because obviously that's a big controversy when it comes to this decision. A lot of guys who are looking at this bike, who probably even haven't ridden either one, are saying, well, the Street Triple, this and that. So we can all look at the spec sheets, and I could have just stayed at home and I could have just gone online and read everything you're going to read. But let me tell you the differences of a guy who's ridden both of them extensively, which is this. Let's start on the comfort. First of all, both naked bikes, both comfortable bikes. The end on that issue. The Street Triple is definitely more aggressive. You've got more rake on it. You're gonna be leaned over a little bit more, but then again, it is also a little bit more aggressive. The Street Triple has a higher lean angle capability, meaning that the bike is got a, I believe, 57 degree lean max, versus this bike has a 52 or 51. So on paper, the Street Triple can achieve more lean than this bike can. That is going to be part and due to the fact that the Triumph is also overall just a little bit more sporty. The suspension. The Street Triple R has better suspension, plain and simple. It's got better components with more adjustment. It also comes a little bit better sorted from the factory than the Yamaha. Now, in regards to the suspension, I might add that while the reviewers seem to make this suspension out to be just as bad as Obamacare, the suspension on this bike isn't that bad at all. And so the idea that you should be turned off this bike because the suspension is just that bad is stupid. The suspension isn't that bad. You just need to adjust it. So if you're not going to adjust the suspension, well, maybe you just shouldn't ride at all, but maybe the Street Triple might be better for somebody who's not going to touch it, just because for whatever reason it's sorted a little bit better from Triumph. Furthermore, gauge cluster. I find that the Triumph gauge cluster, obviously I mentioned it had an analog tachometer, which was my initial preference. After riding this bike and on the Ducati having both the all digital displays, I'm gotten a little bit more used to them, but this display in particular I have absolutely no issues with. I think it's really legible in all light, dark, direct sunlight, very easy to see, so no concerns there. The brakes are phenomenal on this, phenomenal on the Triumph, both front and rear. I say front and rear because some bikes just have great front brakes, but the rear brakes just aren't too great. Just the nature of some bikes. The other thing is, on this bike, in comparison to the Street Triple, the Street Triple is going to have a little bit of a tad higher seat height. Again, on numbers, the Triumph, I believe, has a seat height that's about 0.4 inches more than this bike, but I believe once you adjust the preload on this bike to be where it should be, you'll find that the bikes sit about the same height. So for me, 5'8", I can easily flat foot this bike, no problem. The other thing, this bike clutch is a much smoother engagement. Stop and go on this bike is going to be easier. Just no real technical explanation for that that I know of. Just that's my feeling from both these bikes. This is how I think I would look at both these options. This bike, you're going to save a good chunk of change right off the bat. You're going to find that the Street Triple R is going to cost you realistically about $11,000 and change out the door. This bike is going to cost you realistically about $8,500 to $9,000 out the door. Of course, the initial releases, I've been hearing of guys paying some astronomical prices, but that's not what these bikes are actually going to go for. The other thing in comparison, the Street Triple R comes with Super Corsa tires from Pirelli. Very aggressive tire, extremely round dimensioned style tire, so it's going to dive into a corner a little bit quicker. The tire on this bike is going to be more apt for a little bit of everything, much better commuting tire. The Super Corsa just isn't a great road tire. It tracks really bad on the road. It's twitchy, takes a little bit to get temp in them, and when they don't have temp in them, they're real greasy. This tire is a tire that, of course, every tire is better with temp in it, but this tire, when you get in it and you start riding, you have a lot of confidence. Surprisingly, in the canyon style riding in the corners and stuff, I mean, I was surprised that these tires are great. No complaints when it comes to that. The other thing about this bike that I think is better than the Triumph well, no doubt this engine is a million times better than the Triumph. I say that without exaggeration. This engine is just better. You get more out of this engine, you get more cc's, you get more torque, more horsepower, but the way that the delivery of the torque and horsepower on this bike is just better. The other thing that this bike has is mirrors that actually work, meaning that the Triumph mirrors, as most Ducati mirrors are used for putting your makeup on, and you know, seeing how you look and how your hair is after being having your helmet on for a couple hours. These are mirrors, meaning you can see behind you. I know it's a rare thing on motorcycles these days, particularly in Ducatis, but then again, you know, you really only need to get to Starbucks and back and on those. On this bike you can actually use them. They're great in traffic, and I actually have no complaints for them. I mean, if you don't like the way they look, you know, that's your own issue. You can change them out, but functionality, they work great. Storage. This bike has a lot of underseat storage. Easy to put a wallet, a phone, keys, etc. There's 7-pound capacity underseat storage on this bike, so I like that a lot. Makes it really convenient. The seat I actually also like being one piece. The way that it comes on and off, super easy. You know, no issues or no, you know, real effort required. Everything is really simple and straightforward. So I guess overall, having the suspension adjusted now and everything, the way I would break it down for you is this. If you're going to have one bike only and you're going to want to really go hard in the canyons, maybe an occasional track day, and you know, that's basically what you're going to use it for. Maybe, you know, you do commute but you don't have a major commute, and most of your commuting is in the city and not, you know, any highway, or you know, is just the local stuff, and then you're a weekend warrior as well. Maybe the Street Triple is a better way to go. This bike, on the other hand, does everything, but the Street Triple is going to be more aggressive out of the box. It's going to have more capability, more lean angle, and it's just going to be overall have a couple extra things that make it a little bit better as far as performance when it comes to, you know, handling and stuff, because of the suspension and what all the factory components. Engine-wise, the Triumph just doesn't hold a candle to this. With this bike with Öhlins suspension, or even fully adjustable suspension with better components, of course both bikes are 41 mils, so in that regard it's not that the Triumph has bigger forks, that this bike would just trump the Triumph in every department if it wasn't for those two things. Notice I'm not discussing the fueling, because there is no issue with the fueling. This is an issue that these reviewers had with the bike, because they are more than likely riding it in A mode everywhere, and A mode, like I said, is an extremely aggressive mode, not designed for the road, not designed for what even myself, who I find myself to be a, you know, pretty decent rider, and, you know, a guy who's going to ride pretty hard on the track in the canyons, I don't even see the point of riding this bike in A mode for that type of riding. I mean, I'm still in B mode right now, and I mean, it's all good, it's all fine and dandy. Watch these skaters, always in the way. Oh boy. And so, look, where does the Street Triple win on this bike? Out of the box, suspension. Anywhere else? Let me think. No, it doesn't. I think for what you get for $8,000 on this bike these days, I think is pretty extraordinary. I think you get a lot of bike, an absolutely incredible engine. You know, this engine has so much character, and it's just so nice, and it's so aggressive with it, the way it sounds. I love everything about it. I can't give you one negative on the engine. It's got a way better engine than the Triumph. You know, I've been looking at the bickering on the forums. Oh, the Street Triple R, this and that. This is what it comes down to, guys. You want the Street Triple R or you don't. And you know, it's that simple. So I think that at the end of the day, you know, you either decide, do you want to spend $8,000 and have a bike that's going to do pretty much everything the Street Triple can do, minus on the really aggressive handling side, or do you want to spend the extra $2,000, get the Street Triple R, be a little bit more uncomfortable, have an engine that's going to need to be wrung out a little bit more? That's up to you. That's your decision. You got to decide what you want to do, and you got to decide how you want to, you know, what type of riding you're going to be and what kind of rider you want. For me, this bike is going to be my daily bike, my weekend warrior bike when I'm not going to ride my sport bikes, and it's going to be a bike that I'm going to put a lot of mileage on. And the one thing about this bike that I can tell you, services are inexpensive. The intervals between valve adjustments are huge. I think somewhere in the ballpark of 26,000 miles. So, you know, probably going to exceed the life between up until the second or third owner or fourth owner for most people. The other thing is that this bike, it just, the way that it handles, for me, my seating position and how I am able to handle the bike, I prefer, personal preference there. It doesn't make one bike better than the other. It's just sit on them, see what you like. But one reason I'm kind of hitting on this is because on the forums, even though the forums are complete jargon these days, and you know, I really take everything there with a grain of salt, as everyone should. The reality is this bike is far better than the reviews made it out to be. I think that Yamaha killed it. I think for the price, there's always more they could have done. I mean, shit, it should have come with Öhlins from the factory, if you ask me, but we know that's not going to happen. So we could always say, well, it should have had this, should have had that. But you look at the main things, the things that you can't change, the motor, the things that you know, you can't adjust too much, the chassis. This is where this bike excels. It has the best design as far as a naked bike goes, at least over the Street Triple, in my opinion. The engine is just super crisp and super clean, and everything about it is fun. I think that the fact that this bike has just a whole package going, you know, like I said, from the riding modes to the clear screen to the, you know, Yamaha's now added so you can flash your high beam and have your high beam on, where on the FZ-08, you know, you only had high beam, low beam, no flash. They've made everything clean, crisp. The look on this bike, I think, is just phenomenal. And this is a bike that is also a riot to ride. So when you're done cruising around and you're done on your commute, or you just got done off work late and, you know, now you want to go have a little bit of fun on your way home, you put this thing in A mode and you hit it a little bit and you have a huge smile on your face as you're wheeling everywhere, and the bike is just putting a huge smile on your face. Now, one thing I forgot to hit on, I want to add here as well. I know on all my videos I always say, oh, I should have said this, should have said that. So hopefully I'm not forgetting too much and I answer a bunch of questions. And of course, you can always ask me stuff on the comments. I'd be happy to answer. But the bike runs really cool. And even when you're in traffic and the bike does warm up, you really don't feel any resonating heat. It's super comfortable to be on. I know a lot of guys commute in jeans. You know, I ride in gear all the time, but for me, so what I'm saying is, with the gear, I generally don't feel the heat anyways. By the way, I'm in third gear right now, doing only 40, and I'm going up a pretty steep grade. And so I'm only at what am I at, 5,000 RPM? 40% throttle maybe. Bike just jets up. That's third gear. You know, that's the thing. It's got power everywhere. Gonna hit a good bump here. Didn't unsettle the bike at all. Another big bump. In fact, I don't even know if you could see that on the camera. It handled that so well. I think it's pretty extraordinary. Unbelievable. I mean, honestly, the way that the power comes on this thing is just so awesome. Oh yeah. No. Everything is awesome. I love this bike, guys. I mean, if you're looking for this bike and you had any questions, buy the bike. It's that good. If you wanted to get the Street Triple R, buy it. You can't go wrong with these bikes. They're such good bikes. But the FZ-09, which is ultimately what this review is about, and the reason I wanted to make this review is because I think not only is it cosmetically appealing, you've got a motor which, for me, and the history of Yamaha, they always make bulletproof motors. They've always made good products, in my opinion. And of course, you know, there's Honda guys, there's Yamaha guys. You know, I think both those brands make just great equipment. But I think Jap bikes in a whole, the engines, you know, they just seem to be more bulletproof. I guess that's just how it is. And this engine, I think, is no exception. I think the triple was a genius idea. The torque on the bottom end, the horsepower on the top end, the strong mid-range that this thing has, I think are huge keys to a great bike. And I think that this bike has that. I think that the ease of riding it, I think that the ability to get on it and just be a good rider, I think the confidence of sitting up high, I'm gonna put it in B mode again. I want to cruise. I really like that mode. The confidence of B mode that you get, you know, the ability to just, you know, cruise around and relax is so nice. And when I really want to get aggressive, I put it in A mode. I mean, those are things that I would have only expected to get out of a $15,000+ sport bike, not an $8,000 naked bike. And the thing about this bike too is I get so many people talking to me about it. Every time I've gone to the gas station, which I guess has only been about 3 times or 4 times, people are just surrounding the bike, taking photos, talking to me about it. They love the bike, and you know, I don't blame them. It's a really cool looking bike. It's got some great attributes to it that make it into a really, really hot looking bike. And when it's rolling, excuse me, on the road, I mean, it really grabs your attention. Those wheels pop so well, and that gray, I mean, the whole combo is great. I love everything about this bike. Look, I've said a lot of good things. I want to say some negative things, because there are some negatives to the bike. The first negative to the bike is, of course, the fact that they could have improved on the suspension, and they could have improved on the you know, they could have added a couple extra features. For example, they could have added ABS brakes for those that really wanted it. I really don't think there's an excuse not to have that, especially on a commuter bike. You know, they should have done that. And you know, but again, you know, I've already explained the reasoning behind everything and all the issues that I said, but I agree, you know, the suspension could be better. I have the suspension dialed in perfectly for me, and I'm totally satisfied right now, but I will want more out of it, and unfortunately there just isn't more to get out of it at this point. At this point, I've got the suspension to the max that I can get out of it for myself, as far as capability to be, you know, any more aggressive. I mean, there's just not a lot you can do, because you really got to be able to adjust your compression at that point to really get, you know, the stiffness and stuff that you want out of it. But as you know, you can't do that. So it's set great for what I'm doing with it now. I'll be very happy with it for a while. I'm sure I'll be happy with it far beyond the time when, you know, aftermarket suspension's available for the bike. I definitely will consider doing it. So in that regard, I would say that's the negatives. Everything else, you know, I was initially thinking the screen, the display wasn't going to be good, but it's great. I mean, you can scroll through everything. It has ambient temp, so it's 63 outside right now. Odometer, miles per gallon, trip meter, 2 trip meters, active miles per gallon, so I'm getting 54 right now, and engine temperature, which of course is the 192 figure. The other thing as well on this bike is the fact that you know, I guess everything is just simple. You know, there's no hidden menus. There's everything is right in front of you. You know, you want to hit mode to change your modes, you click mode. There's no going through a screen and a menu and, you know, trying to figure out what's what. Everything's there. Your fuel gauge is great. You know, it's very accurate, actually. It gives you a pretty decent reserve, but it's accurate in the sense that a lot of bikes say they're empty and they still have, you know, 2 gallons left, which for bikes is a half a tank sometimes. The bike has an eco indicator. All that means is when you're riding in the most economic way, it'll tell you that. When you give it, you know, more throttle, obviously you're out of the eco mode. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. It's just to let you know how you're riding. The speedo is very clear. I think the gear indicator is something I'm used to now. Sometimes I'm riding in a gear and I'm, you know, I don't know, thinking about something else if I'm just cruising around, you know, just how it is. Not saying I'm daydreaming, but sometimes, you know, it's good to have a reference. That's all I'm saying. Which it has. The other thing is the transition on this bike. Oh, here's a key. I'm glad I thought about this now. Between the Street Triple and this bike holds its weight a lot lower than the Street Triple. The transitions on this bike are stupid quick. It's like a fucking bicycle. I mean, honestly, it's so fast. It's so quick, the transitions, that it's like, you know, I think that the bike just has a definite handling up on the Triumph when it comes to that. This thing transitions so fast. It's unbelievable. Not only does it transition fast, but it sticks. Meaning, yeah, you can change direction and you can enter the corner just as fast as you can change the direction. It's awesome. So, you know, you get into a corner hard, back out, oh, straighten out, oh, back in. You know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, oh yeah. Look, guys, if you're looking at this bike and you're seriously considering buying one, don't hesitate. Don't worry about, you know, these nonsense fueling issues and, you know, these nonsense, you know, not nonsense necessarily, but the fact that the suspension just you can't deal with it. Oh my God, it's so bad. No, it's not. The suspension, with it adjusted properly, you're gonna have a huge smile on your face all day. You're gonna love riding the crap out of this thing, and you're just gonna love the overall capability that it has. And more than that, when the opportunity comes, keep in mind the money you're saving. You're gonna be able to get the components for this bike that are going to far exceed the Kayabas on the Street Triple R, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, the Street Triple R components also aren't too much to rave about. They're better than this, but they're not that great. Most definitely not worth the $2 grand premium over this bike. And it's realistically more than $2 grand premium anyways, but it's not worth the premium. The suspension on this bike is more than adequate for what it's capable of. I rode with the Street Triple the other day. Him and I were both having a blast. Nobody could get away from anybody on the turns, meaning that his suspension wasn't making him ride any more capable than me. Of course, it comes down to rider as well. But you know, the point is that this bike's so freaking capable. On the straights, you'll walk away from it. It's got more motor. It's easier to ride. No question. Also, because the Street Triple requires to be revved out more and really has to be ridden harder to get the same results. You know, you're putting a lot more wear on the engine, where on this bike, you know, the engine's in a much more relaxed state, producing the same horsepower that the Street Triple R is at a higher rate. Now I'm going over questionably one of the roughest roads in this area, and honestly, I'm only hitting a few bumps where I'm like, oh, that one kind of hurt. But the rest of them, I'm just really kind of cracking up because this suspension, and I'm cracking up only because of the reviews I read. I was really expecting to go over these roads and have to go to call the chiropractor on my Bluetooth and say, hey, you know, I'm heading over there now. I don't know if I'll make it. But no, honestly, it's not bad at all. It's in fact, it's not bad. It could definitely have been better, but it is what it is. And I wouldn't let that steer you away. I mentioned the rear sets. They're really sticky. With my, you know, my boots, sometimes I find that stock rear sets, particularly the pegs, are just too soft. I'm sliding everywhere. And of course, you know, you lose confidence with that. These never had my boot slide at all. Very much like my sport bike, you know, driven rear sets and stuff. Very aggressive, you know, and still comfortable to wear with a shoe though. Other than that, I mean, guys, the paint scheme on this bike, the colors, the you know, the all the functionality, high beam, low beam, the horn. You know, everything is so easy to reach. Everything is there, and I really think that the bike is going to be the next best thing in the sub $10,000 range. I don't think that there's much that can compete with how good this bike is for the money. You know, unfortunately, bikes have become so expensive now with you know, with the dollar being so weak. So $8,000 now, we say, is cheap, when, you know, now average bikes are 12 to 13 to 14 grand and up. But honestly, if you're thinking about a Ninja 650, if you're thinking about a SV 650, Street Triple R, any of those, even though the Street Triple R, it really doesn't fall into that kind of a comparison, you can't go wrong with this bike. You really can't. Everything about it is phenomenal, and I think you'll be very, very happy with it. You know, the only other thing I'm going to touch on is for beginner riders, stay away from this bike. It's got way too much power for guys who have no experience. If you're a guy coming out of a, you know, an SV650 or a Ninja 650, this is definitely a huge upgrade and an awesome bike to get. For advanced riders, guys who, you know, have a sport bike, want to get something that they can ride more every day to work, you know, around in town, or even just a two-up riding style that's more going to be more relaxed. This bike is a ticket. If you really want and don't have any interest in ever touching it in the future, and you want to maybe take it to the track, the Street Triple is your ticket too. All good bikes, all good options. This engine just can't beat it. Unfortunately, Triumph, I'm sorry, but this engine is better than yours by a lot. Honestly, I couldn't be happier that I ended up going this route, and I couldn't be happier that I didn't listen to the reviewers and I took a chance with it, because it's really an amazing bike. I really find that I'm gonna have a really long, you know, I'm gonna own this bike for a while. I really think so. I think it's just an awesome package altogether. So guys, I hope I answered all the questions. I'm having a blast riding it, so I might be getting a bit sidetracked, but I hope I hit on everything. If not, again, feel free to ask, and if I have to, if I missed a lot of things, I'd be more than happy to do another review, take it into a certain spot. So be happy to, you know, post on it, post some comments, let me know what you think about the video, and you know, and if there's anything I can ask. If you're in the Southern California area looking for a dealer, send me a message and let me know, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with somebody who is not going to try and rip you off just because the bike is new. In fact, I think you'll be pretty surprised at the deal. Anyways guys, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.